is all good. Technology is such a blessing and a curse all in one.
Oh, totally. I'm sorry. I have some past experience. A few weeks ago, I had a lot of difficulty with Zoom, so I was kind of dreading it a bit. I was like, oh, great.
Oh, no.
Audio problems. It's totally not your fault at all. It's the standard thing to use, and everyone uses it, and I completely understand that. But I hope that I'm not sounding like I'm underwater right now.
Oh, no, you're fine.
Oh, okay, great.
You're fine. We're going to give everybody just a minute. I'm trying to multitask 50 different things. My co-teacher just sent me a text and was like, could you email me the link? So I'm emailing and texting and all the things.
Yeah.
We are set up like a webinar so that our students, so that I have a little bit of control. so I'm gonna, here in a minute, I'm going to put you on full screen, so cool. Because they see me all the time. They could care less about me. And then, okay, let's see. I need to go here and there, and then click send, and then we'll be good to go.
Cool.
All the things, all the technology. I have these skills, I swear. I think it's been really interesting. I think for a lot of people, it has been a case where all of a sudden you were learning new skills.
Yeah, to adapt to the quarantine.
Which is fine. I'm good with new skills.
Awesome.
I like to learn, which I think is why I like to teach. Because I think they're related. Okay, there we go. Seth has an email. I can close my browser. I can only do one thing. We have first of all, my daughter's attending her very first Zoom conference call with her mother, even though I've been like, you need to come to these. You need to come to these. She's an aspiring illustrator. She's 14.
Cool.
We are humongous Piper Thibodeau fans in our house.
Oh my gosh.
We have
Thank you so much.
We have the Dragon Draw book.
Oh my gosh, you have the book.
We have the Daily Paintings book. And I have Pieces Up right there.
Oh my goodness, I'm so flattered.
we are we love you
so
in
nice
our house.
I really appreciate the support. And the fact that you guys like my stuff. That's so awesome to hear. Thank you.
We are she's not here yet. I have a student who's going to show up here shortly, I hope. My story about how I came to know of you is that I actually had a student about 4 years ago who was like, you have to see this Instagram feed, you have to see it. And so which that's one of my favorite things to do in class is be like, who's exciting to you right now? Who have you seen that's interesting? I think the way that we become better designers and better artists is by looking and paying attention. So I'm always like, who do you got for me? Oh, good. Here is Seth. It'll take him a minute to get all logged in. And then I'll tell you a little bit about us, and then we'll get started.
Good morning, guys.
Good morning, Seth. How are you? Seth, this is Piper.
Hi,
Hello,
Piper.
Seth.
Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
We teach in Colorado at Pikes Peak Community College. Seth and I teach in 2 different programs. One is our traditional community college classes. Seth teaches painting and illustration and color theory. I teach Photoshop and Illustrator and design and graphic, computer based. We kind of joke that I answer the email and Seth sharpens the pencils. But we teach together in a program called Career Start, which is juniors and seniors in high school in our community all come to get career and technical education 5 mornings a week. So we have the same group of kids all year long. We adore them. And we had planned on doing a speaker series in our classroom where we had lots of different local designers from different fields come in and talk about what their day was like, what their job was like. When the world got weird and we went online, I said to myself, you could do this local or you could go big. And so we have gotten to have Just an amazing assortment of really world-class designers and illustrators from around the United States and now Canada. And so we are super honored to have you here today.
I'm super honored to be considered among those who have chosen to do this.
Well, you're one of our favorites. It was,
oh my gosh,
it was about 3 or 4 years ago. I had a student named Bailyn Smith, and she was like, you have got to see this. So she pulled up your DeviantArt. That's what it was. We actually looked at your DeviantArt. And so I have followed you ever since and bought every book and bought all the things and support you on Patreon. And I'm just I'm just a fan. We're fans. We like puns, and so you fit right, and you just fit right in our world.
I love puns. My whole family loves puns.
So I'm going to make you the spotlight. Everybody will get to see you, and we will get started. Okay, so tell us how you got started.
Cool. So yeah, I've been drawing ever since I was a little kid, but I started taking it a lot more serious in high school. I transitioned away from drawing traditionally in a sketchbook to taking on digital mediums like Photoshop. Mm-hmm. Pretty much just Photoshop, actually. Yeah, I've developed a lot since then, and during the last few years of high school, I tried to follow more along the lines of the character designing, concept art kind of a career. Then I went to college for 3D animation, and I went through that process, and I was getting some work in the meantime while I was at school, so it was a little bit hard to manage because I had to do homework and I was doing freelance work. I got through to the end of it and graduated, and been working for a few years in the field. But so I had one experience where I was a character designer and sometimes a visual development artist for Dreamworks TV on a show called Rescue Riders, and that was my first full-time job. But for the most part, I've been doing just freelance work, and I enjoy it quite a lot.
Excellent.
I really love being able to work on my projects. I have more control over my time, I find. So I could split it up between working on freelance on the side and working on main projects, like kind of my risk projects that I don't know if they're going to succeed or not, but I give it a shot.
That's awesome. Where'd you go to school?
I went to school in Montreal at a college called Dawson.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Excellent. In Canada, where the winter days are very short.
Well, you guys are in Colorado, so you know a little bit of the cold, I imagine.
Yeah, we do get a little bit of cold. We laugh about having like the 11th winter and the 12th winter, and it'll be warm for a day, and then all of a sudden we have snow. So I
moved to an even colder place than Montreal. I just had to make it more difficult for myself.
Right? Well, sure. I think sometimes that works out though, because when it's cold, you don't want to be like out. So sitting in front of your computer and working all day works.
Yeah. I don't mind the cold so much as the hostile winds that this island has. I moved to a place called the Magdalen Islands in Canada. Oh. And it's a small island in Quebec. And I wanted to kind of move to a place that was kind of quiet and peaceful so I could focus on my art, and the housing prices weren't that expensive. I moved here, and it's been great. The hostile winds are crazy. Like you will have 100-kilometer winds outside sometimes. And
oh my goodness.
I have my office separate from the rest of the house, so I have to walk across the deck of my house to get from my home to my office. So sometimes it was actually just impossible. I would have to just decide not to go to my office one day because it was like you could not walk against the wind.
Oh my goodness! Yeah,
it doesn't happen all the time, of course, but it happens a few times in the year. It's pretty funny.
That's amazing. So you work from home for the most part. What does your well? Let me ask you this: did you always know you wanted to be a character designer? You said you always drew. Was character design, or was that something you discovered in school? What was sort of that discovery process like for you?
I knew that I always wanted to work in animation as a field. However, I wasn't sure exactly what type of job I wanted, a career that I wanted within that framework. So at first I thought, oh, I want to be an animator, but then I realized it's not really my cup of tea. And then afterwards I tried to do concept art, and I was doing like landscape drawings and stuff, but I figured out that I really just like drawing characters for the most part. And yeah, it's definitely a passion of mine. I don't think that I'm going to continue I love doing character design work and freelancing, but my ideal is to kind of move out of that and to just work full-time on my own projects eventually. So like the more multimedia sorry, how do I word this? Like anything that I'm learning along the lines of like animation or graphic design or what have you, like anything that helps me to make pitches is really great. And I'm trying to shifting that focus right now so I can develop potential pitches for projects that I want to try to greenlight. Not there yet, but I'm hoping that I'll get there someday.
Right? It's always about, there's always the next thing, right? It's never, you're never like, okay, I've made it. I'm at this spot. I've got the thing. I've done the thing. I'm at the spot. I know one of the things we talk with our students about frequently is that when they start their career, they have about 6 words for what the job they want is. You know, like, I want to be an animator. I want to be an illustrator. I want to design logos. You know, but there are hundreds and hundreds of variants of each of those.
Oh yeah, totally.
So what does your average day look like?
So I think it can be more organized than it is presently, and I'm trying to fix that. So that's probably not the answer that you guys want from me, that I have kind of a mess at the moment. But yeah, it's a work in progress, like everything else that I'm doing. But I would say what I typically do is I try to work in my office from 9 to 5, and I focus mostly on my freelance work and then my projects, and I do my daily. Ideally, it used to be in the mornings, but now I kind of push it to the end of the day, and it's not really the best time to do that. So I'm kind of a mess with my schedule, to be honest. I'm trying to really, I can't really move the webcam right now, but this room that I'm in right now, it's actually because I got a house that has a separate office, but I haven't really renovated my office to, not renovate, but I haven't furnished it to really look like an office yet, so it's just a desk in the corner. It's kind of depressing. I try to fix that up for the summer, so it's gonna feel a little bit more lively. Maybe put a plant on the table. I don't know. it's just white and gray everywhere.
Right? It takes time. Be graceful with yourself. It takes time.
Oh, yeah,
and one of the things about offices, especially home offices, is when you're in your office, you're at work. And so you're like, okay, I'm at work. I need to be working, which is not decorating. And then when you're not at work, you're like, I don't want to be in my office. I think a lot of people are feeling that right now. They're like, okay, so now I have this workspace. How do I make it mine?
Oh yeah, completely. You know, it's really funny for me because there's no discernible difference between pre-quarantine time and the present for me.
Right.
Like, this is just what I've been doing for the longest time. So, yeah, like I'm hearing people having difficulty, and I'm like, wait, what's the big deal?
Right.
I'm not trying to mock them or anything. I know it's hard to adapt to that, of course, but it's just it's funny that me and my friends, we're all sedentary, working at home folks.
Right.
So it's like, yeah.
We have a fair number of our students who have really celebrated this experience because they're like, this is how I want the world to work anyway.
Yes. I agree. I love it. Love working from home.
Okay, so you work primarily in Photoshop. Is that where you live these days?
Yeah, I'm pretty much solidly working in Photoshop. I wish I had more versatility in that respect, but for the most part, it's Photoshop, and I'm trying to learn Blender some more. I forgot most of the 3D programs that I used in college, which I regret a little bit. But I mean, I'm sorry, but like 3ds Max and Maya are way too expensive to pay for every month, so I am more than happy to just learn Blender slowly. And I really like that they have 2D tools in them now, like with the new Eevee update. Yeah, that's super cool. I'm trying to learn how to do 2D animation from scratch right now. And,
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I love it because I went to school for 3D animation, so I didn't really get to wet my feet in that area, and it was always my passion. But
Cool.
yeah, there was nothing really in the area. Like in Canada, we only have a few colleges that will focus on that. So
Right.
I'm not talking crap about the program that I went to, of course. But,
Right.
it wasn't my cup of tea. I'd rather draw. But yeah, it's fun. I think Blender is a really fantastic program, and students especially should try to use it, even if they're working primarily in 3ds Max or Maya in college, because it's probably going to be the more affordable option when they're out of school if they decide to work from home. Of course, it's not really the same problem if they're working inside of a studio,
Right.
because they'll have the licensing fees and everything for that. It's a good home option. Or you want to do projects on the side.
And the concepts, the principles don't change depending on, from software to software. The tools may change a little, but the concept is still the concept. Animation works the way animation works.
Oh yeah, yeah. And Blender is nothing like it used to be when I first saw it. Blender, I'm sorry, but Blender back in 2011 was terrifying. And now it actually looks similar to Maya and 3ds Max, which is very nice. I like the UI.
My 3D animation experience is I installed Blender probably around 2011. I tried to create something with some stock, default. I couldn't get the arm attached. I closed the program and I uninstalled it. That's my 3D animation experience. It's like, nope, too much.
It really was not user friendly. I'm pretty sure that someone that works in 3D all the time, maybe they would lend more to that. They would have that UI, but oh my gosh, it's not friendly. But now it is. Now it's great. They have so many tutorials, and I'm looking forward to working in there when I get the chance.
Yeah, awesome. Would you talk to us a little bit about how you come up with I've made all of my students look at your work a lot lately, and we have been really inspired by the number of different variants you can come up with and your puns. What does your process look like? How do you come up with your ideas? When you have the idea, where does it go from there, and how does that work for you?
I'm gonna have a really funny answer for this, but so usually the way I'd say for the most part, as I've been doing these daily paintings, I would kind of scare myself into making ideas by giving myself a time limit at the end of the day, where from the very inception that I've started this project, what I've done is I have to have a drawing submitted before 12 o'clock at night. So, and if I don't, then I have to start if you notice, like I'm each daily has a number attached to it. It's like each day has gone by. So I have not skipped a single day since I started it, and that's how I scare myself, where I don't want to start back to number 1 because it's gonna, for some reason I'm really affected by that because I'm a perfectionist and I don't like starting back to number 1. So I end up I get to the end of the day and I feel really motivated to come up with an idea, and I've kind of forced it out. But I don't think that's really the best approach. I think that adrenaline is not, adrenaline works. I think adrenaline, I know this even for my freelance assignments. Sometimes I have a crazy deadline, and I also use adrenaline in that case, and it will push me through to the deadline. But
I was going to say, I think fear is a really valid motivator for designers.
Yeah, I would highly advise artists to not do that, actually, even though that's what I have been doing. I think you should try to, because it'll pile up. If you're going to make yourself anxious, especially at night, you're probably not going to sleep very well. And I had a lot of insomnia issues up until recent. And so, yeah, I would be using fear in that case. And now what I've tried doing is I'm trying to give myself a theme every week. I've been doing that for the past month or so. So I think it's easier to come up with, one of the problems with art blocks I find is that they kind of look at a blank canvas and it's too infinite. They don't really know where to start. And when you kind of box yourself in voluntarily, I think that it's a lot easier to conjure up ideas. So for instance, like right now, it's not really the best idea that I could have come up with, but like my theme has been ice cream. So and frozen desserts. So I'm thinking of puns that are kind of along those lines, more or less. And yeah, that's the week prior. I think it was the Loch Ness Monster.
It was. We looked at all of them.
I have to come up with better themes. It's a little bit restrictive, the few that, because it's, I've kind of just thought of it last minute, unfortunately. So I end up stuck with it for the whole week if it's not a good idea. That's not fun. But yeah, boxing yourself in and kind of creating imaginary lines for yourself not to cross, I think it's a great way to generate ideas in that way. However, I would say that with my dailies, I mean, I have to be a little bit self-critical here. I think that they tend to be pretty repetitive, and I don't like that very much.
Okay.
And I know that the reason why that is because it's just, as I was saying before, I usually do these things later in the day, and I'm kind of working on adrenaline. And I think that really does take away from creativity and exploration, because if you're really worried about spending, getting your daily in, it could kind of, instead of being a daily practice of sorts, you just end up creating the same thing and you learn nothing. And I feel like that's a big problem. Like, my ideal is that I want to get to a point where I'm able to use my daily as like, I have to have a period of the day where I study new concepts and techniques, and then the daily is the application of said techniques under the guise of a pun and something like that. I think it's just far more useful. And if I have to recommend doing dailies to any student, I would probably suggest like just try doing studies, and maybe like, so if I were to do just hypothetically what I did yesterday with the ice cream, I don't even remember. It's so repetitive. I can't even remember what I did. I gotta be honest. But I'm looking at that, and I would have rather that I actually like study from photographs, like all these different, like how ice cream texture works, and how the lighting works on that necessarily. And I haven't, and I really think that that's a super important aspect of doing dailies if you want to make them useful and not purely just for the sake of doing them every day, essentially.
I don't know. I would argue sometimes I think there's value in just the process of just making yourself do it. I would imagine that because you've been so committed to that you have tools in place to really break through creative blocks, which personally, I believe breaking through a creative block is in many ways is just practice, right? It's just a skill to start. And I think that you've probably developed that skill in spades.
Yes, a little bit.
Whether you wanted to or not.
Yeah, I think visual libraries are also really important when it comes to trying to come up with new ideas, because I mean, there's that whole adage where nothing is really new, but I think it's a bit vague. I think what really matters at the core of it is that we need to have a pool of visual images in our mind, so that like if you're gonna, let's say for instance, if someone wants to draw a house, you don't want to draw a hieroglyph of what a house looks like the standard little box with the triangle roof.
Right.
You kind of want to have enough visual images in your mind to conjure that without having to go to Google. And it's really important. So you really do need to be studying everything in front of you, just intake as much information as you can, be a sponge.
Yeah. Yes. Our part of the speaker series idea came out of a project that I give all of my students, which quite frankly they hate, and I don't care. We asked them to do research about lots and lots of different artists and designers who inspire them, and then kind of trace the family tree where they go find out, okay, what is it about this person I like? What is their style? How would I define it? But who inspired them and who inspired them?
Yeah, that's really important.
Because I think it's really important for them to build that, we call it visual vocabulary, same thing, that library of being able to like pull ideas and then being able to talk about them in a way that you can identify what it is that you like about it, so that you can go, okay, if I wanted to try Piper's style for this next project, here are the things that would make that, right? Here are the textures that are common, here are the color themes that are common, the pun element that's common. Because even if I were to try and replicate your style, I will never be able to do it. which is so much the beauty of art, right? Like
Right.
in the art world, we go, I'm working on this project. What do you think about my answer? As opposed to math, where we're like, don't look at my paper.
Right. I think students oftentimes, they just kind of get caught up with the whole style thing. Like they think that that's really the be all end all, when it's not at all. It's just something that comes about naturally.
Right.
It becomes an amalgamation of all of your interests and, what you generally like drawing. And it's going to look distinct like a fingerprint no matter what you do. And you don't really want to try to mimic an artist entirely. And actually, what I would say, I could just throw in my 2 cents. I think it's really good to make studies of artists that are still living, but it's even better to study artists who are long gone.
Yes.
Because for one thing, their work is usually it's you can't say royalty free. The copyright is
right.
There's a word I'm missing it, but
public domain.
Yeah, public domain. Yeah, you're entirely right. A lot of these works are in the public domain. You can't really be. It's fallen into like that archaic time period where you're not going to be criticized for copying. And I'm not saying to copy their work. I'm saying, of course, like just make master studies of those old artists to try to figure out why do they do these brush strokes. And because if they have stood what makes them different than modern artists is just that if their work is still relevant today, it means that it's good enough that it stood the test of time and it's worth really studying. And there's plenty of artists from that period that their work fell out of relevancy. And I'm not saying it's not worth studying, of course, but you're going to kind of dig into a big pool of knowledge by observing these greats, essentially.
Right.
Well said.
Very well said. Well, and the other thing is that when everything old is new again, right? That's an old cliche, but the fact of the matter is there's a lot of truth to that. One of my favorite graphic designers of all time is a man named Milton Glaser, and who works in New York and designed the I Love New York logo, among a million other things. But when he broke onto the scene, the thing that made him different was he started looking at historical styles and using it in contemporary work. And I think there's so much to be gathered from that. Those resources are widely available, but also not widely referenced anymore. Right. So you can always find somebody and kind of dive down a rabbit hole and end up in a really cool place. Okay, would you talk a little bit about freelance work? How do you find your freelance work? How do you balance your freelance work with your own projects? How's that go for you?
Right. So for the most part, I think I wouldn't know if my experience is really the same as most people are doing freelancing, but because I have a different way of going about it. So whichever way ends up getting you jobs is great. But my way personally is that I use my dailies as a means of advertising my work, and usually the work comes to me rather than me going out to it. So I'll end up making connections with companies like Hasbro or Mattel and Spin Master and places like this, and they've worked with me before, so I kind of build up. How do I say I'm on their radar, so if they have projects, they usually come back to me, and I have a certain amount of projects that I'll take at any given time. So I haven't really experienced a situation where I had to go and search for work myself, although again, that's really propped up by the dailies that I do, because it's sort of like just a free advertisement for my stuff. It's like a daily portfolio of sorts. But there's other artists where I think it's really important where you want to, if you're not going to go that route, you have to have this really solid portfolio. That's very important. And your portfolio typically should not, you should tailor it to the job that you want to get. I think it's very dangerous when you start putting, well, not dangerous, but you're just not going to catch as many fish if you're going to essentially put a bunch of multimedia projects into a portfolio and call it a day. So if you want to get a job in character design, show what you want to basically make the portfolio that the potential employer will be looking for. You want to kind of put yourself in their position to say okay, if I don't have a lot of time. I have maybe 5 minutes to look through your portfolio. I don't want to dig around for the most important work. So, have that be at the forefront, like what you want them to see. And then I really think that you're going to have an easier time to get a job if you're a student in this case.
That's awesome. Well, we've talked a little bit about your daily paintings, but what would you say has been the value of that? What's the good of it? What's the bad of it?
Well, the good of it is that it forces me to. I mean, I think that it's what's given me the career that I have at the present. So it's given me a lot of opportunities. So that's quite good. I don't think I would have had it without it. However, the bad of it is that, as I was mentioning earlier, it can get very repetitive, and you want to avoid that. You want to try new things, and you don't want to kind of do the whole trudge through the dirt, just repeating yourself time after time. So, the same face syndrome of I heard that before we used. So, I kind of see that in my own work sometimes, where it's I've done this pose before, I've done this, I'm restricted, and I think a lot of times when I try to self-diagnose why that's happening, I think I need to really refine my fundamentals. I think I skipped ahead a little bit. And if I'm able to do some studies about poses and whatnot, I would be more confident to try it during the little time that I have to do it daily, as opposed to right now being very restricted because I only have so much time and I'm studying as well. So I really, again, insist that people should study those fundamentals and make some time in the day for those. Even if you have to choose between dailies or doing daily studies, to do the studies.
Okay, that's fair. That's a probably really good feedback, or really good.
Both is good though.
Right. Well, and I have always appreciated that you post process as well as finished. I love to see your sketches. I love to see the ideas form themselves as they come through the process.
I'm glad you like them.
I'm an art nerd like that though. Well, and I think it's the teacher in me. I'm like, how did that happen? I like to see the whole thing. How do you deal with burnout? Do you get
poorly? I wouldn't say that I'm the best at dealing with burnout. I guess when I'm overwhelmed, I just try to pace around my room. I wish I had a better answer. I'm not really great at that. That and schedules are two things that I'm really trying to work hard on.
I appreciate that. I can relate. Okay, so let's talk about your visual library, your visual vocabulary. Who are your influences? Who do you like?
Oh man, I love James Gurney quite a bit. I love his work. It's really great. Let's see. So James Gurney, Goro Fujita is really great, for modern artists. I love because he does a lot of quick work, it's 30 minutes as well. And I think it's just a fantastic example of, it's not really dailies because he doesn't necessarily put it out every day, but it's quick works that are 30 minutes a shot, and they really explored a bunch of different concepts. Super cool. I like Pascal, I'm going to butcher his last name, Pascal Campion or something.
Okay.
He's another artist that has a really neat style. And there's artists of sort of antiquity. I like, okay, now I'm going to really butcher this guy's name. I could never pronounce it. W.C. Wyeth.
Oh yeah, W.C. Wyeth.
Oh yeah, great. I love his work. I just could never pronounce his name because I never heard it said out loud.
We actually had an exhibit recently with both his work and the work of his son in the same exhibit. It was spectacular. So
great.
Good.
Awesome. I've really taken a liking to these old national park posters with that Art Nouveau style. I love those so much. I mean, I don't really say it influences my work just yet because I'm not working on landscapes right now, but I really do want it to influence my work. It's really beautiful. I want to get those prints. There's a company called 51. I think it's 51 Parks or something. And they made a board game recently that was based off of that poster set. It's really beautiful.
Very cool. Very cool. Do you have a favorite project
that I've worked on?
Yeah.
I have a favorite project, but I haven't finished it yet, but I really want to get back to it. So basically, when I was in college, I was supposed to do a short film for my thesis, and it was kind of too complicated for me to pull off, and I had a lot of free, because I was working on doing a children's book at the same time. I had a ton of freelance work, and I was trying to do schoolwork, so I ended up just making a crappy trailer for it and was calling it a day so I could graduate. But I left that on the shelf for now, my short film. Okay. It's called She, and it's about, it's not spelled she, it's like S-H-I-E, S-H-E. It's S-I-D-H-E, it's an Irish word for fairy, and I wanted to work on this story for a long time, and I've always shelved it, but I really love the process of making films, so I'm really eager to get onto that again when I have the shot. But unfortunately, I kind of have to look at this in terms of what's gonna make me money. Not to be vain, but like I kind of have to consider the fact I'm not going to make a lot of money off of that. So it's kind of, it's going to take a huge amount of time, and I'm probably not going to make much. And so I kind of have to be at a point in my life where that's not really that much of a concern, and I don't feel like I'm there yet. So it's staying shelved for now, or I'm working on it in bits. But for the most part, I'm trying to work on projects that could propel me a little bit more forward, because I feel like I really need to be financially stable enough to take bigger risks like that.
Right. Nice. What kind of projects are you the most excited to see in your inbox?
You know, honestly, I really love the work I've been doing with Hasbro. I can't talk about it, but because of the NDAs and everything. But
she could tell us, really, but she'd have to kill us.
Kind of hard since I'm on Zoom.
Right.
Unless I'm like Darth Vader and I'm going to use the Force choke. That'd be useful.
Yes.
Now I'm going to have to watch Toy Stores forever until you can tell us about it.
Oh gosh, it's really fun though. I really enjoy toy product design. Surprisingly more than working. I mean, I'm not talking crap about working in animation. It's a field that I really like, but I'd rather be working on my own stuff in animation. So toy design is something where it's fresh, it's new, it's interesting to me. I like designing toys from all angles, and it's a lot of fun. Like, child me would be really proud that I'm doing toy design right now.
Right?
I've satisfied my inner child.
Awesome.
When that project, I know you can't tell us about that project, but when that project came in, did you find it a little bit intimidating? Did you feel qualified for it? Did you, your babackground's 3D animation, so 3D is not out of your realm of thought process.
I wasn't really great at it. I was a really mediocre 3D animator. I just did it for the most part. I'm not, of course, I'm not talking badly about that program, but for the most part, I knew that I had to graduate so that if I was going to get hired to work in the States, I needed to have at least a secondary school, not secondary school, sorry, a college diploma. Right. Yeah. And so I kind of just pushed through it for that, but I don't really have great 3D skills. But when it came to doing stuff like the Hasbro work, it was similar to doing illustrations. So I didn't feel that intimidated. It wasn't really out of my level of expertise. So I didn't feel too put off. Okay. And it was fun.
I always think it's fun to have, I always think it's fun to have projects that are maybe a little bit outside of your, because they push you. They make you be engaged.
Oh yeah, as long as the person that you're working with, and that's also something else that I would recommend if you're doing freelance work, is you want to make sure that the person that is hiring you knows how to work with an artist. That's a big one, because sometimes people don't, like, they're not accustomed. It's no fault of their own, but it's the onus is on you to kind of read the person and tell if they're gonna have problems like that. Like they don't understand, like, I mean, you know, if someone hired you and they don't understand how Photoshop works, they could start asking some really absurd things, and you kind of want to lay the groundwork in the very beginning and make sure that you cover your butt with the contract. Yeah. So everything's properly detailed and that everyone understands each other. But usually when you're working with things like Hasbro or anything that has like an art director behind it, it's smooth sailing. It's really easy. They know what they want, and no problems.
And if they've come to you because they know you're the person that they want to do it, which is really cool.
That's really fun.
How do you handle a project that doesn't go well, or that goes off the rails, or that has somebody who doesn't understand how to work with an artist? What's your experience been in that arena?
I think for the most part, I've avoided those in recent years because I've learned from the past. But if I have to go back into the past, a lot of I was alluding to this earlier when I was going to school and working on freelance work. I had a lot of problems go awry with that. So what would happen is I would be doing let's say I had a book project that I won't mention directly, but it worked. I got everything through in the end, but it was a headache. It was terrifying. I had to act whereas normally I'm very prompt with getting work in. I had to travel 4 hours to get to school. A total day.
Oh, goodness.
Not one way, but like there and back.
Round trip.
And it was really harsh. And I basically was working for the most part on the bus on my Cintiq companion. And so there was a lot of difficulty there that I'd say don't bite more than you can chew.
Okay.
Absolutely. Like you're gonna if you could tell in advance that you don't have time for this. Just because it's going to get you a certain amount of money doesn't mean that you should take it on. You have to make sure that you think it through before you jump into it. And it's really important.
Awesome. Okay, one of my students has a question she likes me to ask everybody, and it's become kind of one of our favorite weird questions. But do you have a favorite snack that you eat while you're designing?
No. I don't really snack a lot. I've got sorry, I have.
Sorry, Maddie. She's not a snacker, Maddie. She's not going to tell you can have Pop-Tarts while you're working.
Sometimes I'll eat some nuts. Maybe some squirrel.
Okay. That's how you could do your research. You could be eating ice cream this week.
Oh yeah, I can't do that because I'm doing keto. So. I wish so. I miss ice cream. It sucks. I really, I think in a way, drawing all this not low carb food in my dailies, it's my way of coping.
There you go.
Drawing my ice cream cone.
Drawing all the things you'd like to be eating. I understand that.
Yeah.
How long on average do you spend on your daily drawing or your daily painting?
So it could take anywhere between 45 minutes to ideally I want to be spending an hour and a half. Unfortunately, I very rarely am spending an hour and a half, and I feel disappointed in myself for that. But that's actually one of my ways of getting around this is that I'm planning on doing my dailies on Twitch every day.
Oh, cool.
So, it's a lot of setup for me to get that ready, but I am working on that currently because I think it's going to be good pressure to have people both watching me work, so I kind of feel a bit motivated. It's more of a session in the day that I have to do, and I feel like I'm going to actually complete the goal of spending an hour and a half on them.
Oh, nice. I love that you structure your own deadlines in a way that they are motivating instead of, and maybe intimidating, but a little bit of both. Do you listen to music while you work?
Yes, but it depends at what stage of my work that I'm doing that, and it depends also what kind of music it is. And I mean, it's just for myself personally, but I find if I am doing the thinking work, I prefer to not listen to any music at all. So like the most critical part of it, I'm not going to listen to music. If I'm doing anything that's kind of mildly intensive, I'll put instrumental film scores on, maybe classical music, but like nothing that has any vocals in it. I find that extremely distracting. But if it's really just mindless work, I could put a podcast, I could put music on. It's not a problem.
Do you have a favorite podcast?
To be honest, I don't really listen to podcasts all the way. A little bit. but haven't been able to get into it. Well, there's one that I listened to that's kind of like I was listening to for a time. That's a little bit inappropriate, so
okay.
It's a lot of swearing, so I don't really know if I should.
I appreciate that. Those are the best kind. What do you do? What do you do when you're not working? Do you have any hobbies?
Basically, I love collecting Pokemon cards.
Nice.
I also really like biology, and I'm trying to do some. I'm starting to study Latin a bit right now. I'm really weird. I'm sorry. The worst answers when it comes to
No, but you don't. So one of the things Seth and I love about the program we teach in, thanks, David. So one of my students just said, Betsy swears like a sailor, which is not untrue.
Okay. So I could say that the podcast was Sleepy Cabin then.
Okay. That's too funny.
Yeah, it's a bunch of swearing animator guys.
Nice. And one of our other students says, and I noticed this and I wasn't going to comment, but nice Banjo-Kazooie shirt.
Yeah, someone noticed it. Oh, I love this
yes.
shirt. I got it from Fangamer.
It's my favorite game.
Awesome. Oh, I love Banjo-Kazooie.
My whopping 4 games that I play. No, one of the things Seth and I love about the program we teach in is because our kids come from, we have 20 students this year. We probably have 17 high schools. So they're all sort of the student that I identified as like the weirdest student in their school. And then they all come together and they're like with their tribe, right? It's like all the weird kids in the same room, and it is amazing. We're so fortunate and so lucky. So no, we totally get this. This is, these are answers that we would be like, oh, that's totally normal. Are you a reader? Do you read?
Yeah, I wish I was reading more, but I do read. Right now, I'm reading a book called, gosh, it sounds so stupid when I say the title. It's called How to Read a Book by Mortimer J. Adler.
Oh, nice.
And it's actually a really great book. Basically what it is this guy was pretty much a savant, and he made a big list of all the important classics of Western literature to read.
Uh-huh.
And I want to read those, but I'm not educated enough, so I'm trying to understand how to actually read a book properly. Because I don't feel that, but from my experience in high school, we kind of glossed over how to read past a 5th grade level, I find.
Uh-huh.
So I have a book, I have the Iliad that I really want to read, but I don't feel like I'm absorbing enough of it. So I'm trying to read this book first so I could get a better idea on how to zap up enough info from that first.
I love it. Love it. I actually think I may have that book sitting on my shelf.
Oh, you should read it. It's really great. He's very thorough.
My problem is that I tend to buy more books than I could ever possibly read because I love them.
I do that with video games too.
Yeah.
Okay. It's the problem of the backlog. I do that with books and video games and everything. It's just, I end up buying it. It's like, oh wow, this is so great, and it stays on my shelf and I can read it.
Okay, so my students will kill me if I don't ask. What's your favorite video game?
Oh my gosh. Gosh, wait.
Okay, top 3.
Favorite. Wind Waker. Okay, Wind Waker.
Okay.
I love Wind Waker. I love the swirls. I stole the swirls. I put it on my artwork all the time.
Nice.
It's the best atmosphere that I've seen out of the video game before. Just the whole world. It's very immersive. It was really great to have that. You get on your little boat, you could go anywhere, even though you're theoretically not going in. You're staying within the map. It's not really open world, but it feels like open world, and that's really great. I love Zelda games in general. Zelda games are great. It's kind of a generic answer. Everyone loves Zelda, but I really do like them. Yeah, there's a bunch of other games that I like, but I don't want to say 5 hours.
Okay, so
I don't game that much though. I mostly draw.
That's fair. One of my students asks, although I feel like in some ways you've almost answered this, was Banjo-Kazooie an influence on your style, or any other video games that are an influence on your style? And your pun drawings seem reminiscent of Pokemon, because you like Pokemon. So
I do love Pokemon.
we get that.
Well, I'm gonna say the most disappointing thing ever. But like, I only played Banjo-Kazooie last year. I bought a Nintendo 64 cartridge for it, and I made a retro setup for gaming because I never had the opportunity when I was a kid. And I was always bitter about that because I always wanted to play that game. So now I did it, and I have a shirt to prove that I'm a Banjo-Kazooie fan. Now I'm compensating for that.
That's okay. I will. Now I'm old, but that's neither here nor there. I will argue that the Nintendo 64 was always and always will be the best game system.
Oh, I love Nintendo. I prefer GameCube though. I'm a GameCube enthusiast.
Okay, that's fair. Okay. Do you have any dream clients, people that you hope to work with or would love to work with, or that you haven't gotten to yet?
I mean, I know the Pokemon company's never going to hire me because they. I would love to make a Pokemon card that's just like to design one of the trading cards. That would be like my dream, but it's like really out there because usually they only hire artists that have residency within Japan. So it's probably not going to happen. But if it's my dream, okay, sure. The unrealistic one there.
Right? That's okay. We all have those, don't we?
Yeah.
Mine is to interview Milton Glaser, and he's told me no a couple of times.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I keep asking.
Keep at it.
I'm not smart enough to, right? I'm not smart enough to take no for an answer. I just keep asking. And then I print off his rejections and save them.
So you're going to take them out when he finally says yes.
Right? I'll be like, see all the times you told me no? God love him.
Show it to him on webcam.
Yep, exactly. I think you need to just make a series of Pokemon cards as your daily drawings in a couple of weeks. I think you should do it. So last week we interviewed a local children's book illustrator named Luke Flowers. And
I know him. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know him personally, but I know him online.
Well, I'll shoot you a link to last week's discussion. But one of the things that was super cool for us was he talked about how he used to just post stuff on his Instagram and on Dribble and all the places that you post things that were the work that he loves. So the Muppets and Mr. Rogers, and he ended up getting into an art gallery called Gallery 1988, and which is all fan art. So I say you should just do it. I think you should just make Pokemon cards and post them.
Actually,
your daily drawings.
Actually, I could kind of allude to this a little bit because I can't say the concept that I have for it.
Right.
But right now, the project that I'm working on is my own card game. So.
Oh, awesome!
I'm sort of fulfilling that dream in a little way.
In a roundabout way.
It's like, fine, you're not going to hire me. I'll make my own.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
I think there's something to be said for that. I think sometimes that drive of I want to do this, but you won't hire me is, for whatever reason, is the greatest motivator. It becomes this thing where you're like, okay, fine, I will show you. And I think sometimes takes us in directions that we never would have gone otherwise.
Yeah.
Which I just think is super cool. Seth, you have any questions?
Yeah, Piper, you talked about it earlier, moving out to the island to kind of focus on freelance. When you were living where you were before, was it distracting being around more energy and more confusion, let's say, that you don't find being out there on the island? And does it give you any trouble as far as finding clients being kind of isolated like that?
Well, actually, that's a great question. So one of the motivating factors for me moving to a really remote location is actually because I have Asperger's syndrome, and I had a really hard time with Montreal and cities in general and all the stimuli. So I wanted to move to a place that was just more peaceful, so I could focus and deal with less of stimuli. How do I say? Just a lot of the difficulties that I had back there pretty much dissipated when I moved here. And yeah, I'd say that some of the problems that I experience right now, it's not so much that I'm not getting the same freelance clients because I could do everything remotely, but the internet on this island is pretty slow. So I kind of have to work around that. They're supposed to upgrade the internet this summer, but now due to the quarantine, I'm gonna have to wait another few years. Yeah,
Okay.
that might take another decade.
Okay.
So that kind of sucks. But outside of that, I found that the laid-back atmosphere has been helping me a lot. Although I do think that it depends on the person. So for instance, like I said, I have Asperger's, but someone else who doesn't have problems like that, they might really benefit from staying inside of a city and the social outings that you can have with other artists. Like you might need to stay in a city to have job opportunities if you're not going to be doing things via freelance. So it really does depend on the artist in particular, I find.
Thank you. Excellent. One more question for you. Just since the majority of our kids are leaving high school, getting ready to start college, they've formed a lot of art connections and friendships. Have you stayed in contact with any people that you studied with back in college?
I was kind of a little bit antisocial in college.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. For the most part, I didn't really interact with others, so I'm not really. But I do have 2 friends that I talk with on Discord, and they're my social interaction. But yeah, I'd say that if you have really solid connections with people in college, yeah, absolutely try to stay in touch with them as much as you can.
Thank you.
I do have another question. I was just thinking about this. So the first place I encountered your work was on DeviantArt. Your Instagram feed is constant. What is your take on social media? Where should students be present? And what kind of advice do you have for them in that arena?
Yeah, with social media, I'd say that the best thing is to, for myself personally, I try to not be as engaged with it as possible. I just use something called Hootsuite, and what it allows me to do is to pre-schedule posts. So let's say in the day, like right now, I wanted to post something at 12 o'clock. Actually, while we were doing this interview, I didn't post it manually. I posted it through this scheduling app. And I think it's really great to do that because it could be kind of like a long rabbit hole when you start to kind of look at your Twitter feed. But I say this with a little bit of trepidation because I understand that, it's a great way of finding art from others and, kind of staying up to date with what's happening in the industry. But there's a lot of crap on Twitter. Like it's
never
I can't
words
stand
were
it.
spoken.
Yeah, another thing, don't get involved. Just don't. Just don't. Like
Okay.
you see problems on there, just turn the other way. It's a never-ending controversy. It's like some people, they just live off controversy and they just
Yeah.
I don't want to. I think it's good to just focus on your artwork. These things ultimately don't matter. Don't get upset over. Like, it's just not worth it. Just focus on your stuff.
Right.
It's gonna waste your time.
One of my I don't want to say mandates to my students. One of the things I recommend to my students is that you should never really take any credence in feedback you get on the internet because you don't know who it is, right? You don't know if they can draw a stick figure that needs to be explained or if they have any skills to know what they're talking about. I always tell my students, only take feedback from people who did what you could do or who could do the same thing you just did. If they don't have that level of understanding, perhaps you should just be kind and say thank you and then, put it away and move on. Because I think more often than not, the internet can be super toxic.
Oh yeah, people just talk crap because they have that cloud of anonymity.
Right, exactly. Well, and they don't always
it.
have the and I think sometimes the people who tend to talk the most crap are the ones who are really envious of your skill set.
Yeah.
Really would like to be where you are and aren't there yet and aren't sure how to get there. So I always tell my students, I'm like, I wouldn't read any comments on anything.
Yeah, fair enough.
Just post
I try
it
to
and go.
comment back sometimes, but it's kind of really hard. I feel bad because people go through the effort of putting a comment, so I feel like I ought to go through the effort of replying back and saying thanks, but you end up saying thanks to a lot of people. It just takes away time. It's hard to find a mix.
Is there one platform over the other that you feel like has been more beneficial to you?
Does it have to be necessarily social media?
No.
Okay. Well, I really do like ArtStation.
Okay.
When it comes to trying to get work, like I think DeviantArt's great for what it is. However, I'd say that DeviantArt is great as a platform for younger artists that are kind of taking off, and it's still relevant. And but when it comes to like industry related stuff, I'd say ArtStation really fits the bill.
Okay.
There's a lot of potential employers on there, and I like how they allow you to set up your portfolio. It's really tailored towards that. I think it's great. I also do think that if I have to pick any of the social media platforms, you should be posting on every social media platform, by the way. I mean, if you try to expand as much as you can, but it's annoying. It's like 5 minutes out of your day to post on those other sites. So it's good to vary up where you're posting. But out of all the social media sites that there are, I'd say that Instagram's probably the best. And out of my own bias, it's because there's just less crap talking on there. It's just you post your art and people leave you alone.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Instagram does seem to be sort of the art, the art social media place.
Yeah.
It's the feed that if I want to feel better, I go to Instagram. If I want to feel angry, I go to Facebook or Twitter.
It's like it's just so visually oriented that you barely even notice any text there to begin with.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's the no frills site. If I have to pick which one's the best, yeah, I'm definitely going to go with Instagram.
Awesome. Okay. Attendees, people, students, friends, anybody have any questions? Because we're going to wrap it up. They have this awesome Q&A ability to ask questions, or we could let you talk to Piper if you want to ask your question.
That'd be cool.
But y'all have to, right? They're fun. Oh, do you have a favorite thing to draw?
Dragons.
Hence the book.
Dragons and reptiles.
Hence we're going to plug. Okay, hang on.
That's so nice.
I'm going to be the spotlight video. You should, okay, I have a green screen, which is why it's disappearing. The cover is green. You should all
have a
look
special
at
transparent
Dragon Draw by Piper Thibodeau. There it is. This is a cool book. It teaches you how to draw dragons and how to paint and how to design, and it's all our magic tricks, and I highly recommend it.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. I'm always happy to plug a book. My students are like, if Betsy doesn't have a book about it, it just doesn't even exist. Which is just the way I am. And I can't wait for summer when I'm not teaching quite so much, because my summer goal is to get through this book. I'm going to learn to draw dragons. And then I'm going to tag you on them when I post them on Instagram.
Oh yeah, please do. I'd love to see them. It's awesome. I wish more people were showing me their dragon drawings when they finish it. Because like I don't know, ever since the quarantine happened, I haven't really been seeing much feedback on the book. So I'm kind of concerned because it's the first book that I know that I did the art book, but it was more of a compilation of drawings. But this one was the first one that I actually, I technically am the author on it. I don't feel like calling myself an author. It's a bit weird. It says how to draw a book, but I guess that's what I have to say for that. But yeah, it's like I'm kind of a little bit nervous. I don't know if I hit the mark with it because I haven't really seen much feedback. So if anyone like wants to show me their dragons and at the end, like that's so cool. I'd love to see
Okay,
that.
we totally will. Talk about the book. How did that happen? Did they contact you? Did you pitch
Yeah.
them?
I was contacted to make a dragon drawing book, and they read my mind, which is funny because I worked on a show for Dreamworks about just during almost the same time period of drawing, of doing dragon. I made dragon character designs
Uh-huh.
for How to Train Your Dragon spinoff, and
Nice.
it was super fun. How to Train Your Dragon was actually, like, I remember when I was in high school, I was super, because I don't know if I'm taking up time. By
Oh
going
no,
on, but
you
okay.
you can talk
Um,
as long as you want.
Okay, great. So what happened was just that I had a lot of difficulty in high school, and there was at one point I wasn't even sure if I was going to be able to graduate because I was having a ton of absences and just having I was just not succeeding in that setting. And it really crushed me to watch How to Train Your Dragon at the time, which was in the cinema, and it was during my last year of high school. During the 11th grade, and I saw this and I was like, oh, I'm never going to be able to work on How to Train Your Dragon or anything similar, and I felt like garbage. And so, like, it was really cathartic to actually work on a spinoff afterwards, years later. That was really awesome. And
That's really cool.
made me feel great.
That's awesome. Dragons are lovely. They're one of my favorite things. I like them.
Eastern or Western dragons?
I'm a Western dragon girl.
Nice.
Which is not to say that I don't love Eastern dragons too. I'm just a Western dragon girl. I'm a Viking dragon girl, to be completely honest.
Sorry, what was the question initially? I kind of got a bit off course.
I have no idea. Oh no, the process of the book. If they came, you answered it. Did they come to you, or did you come to them? Or
they came to me. They basically said that if I wanted to author my own book, it was going to have to be about drawing dragons, and outside of that, the floor was mine to do whatever I wanted. And so I spent a good year just working on that drawing book. And
nice.
It was.
I was literally just going to ask what the timeline on the project was. So a year.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's spectacular.
Yeah.
I can't wait. We get out of school in about 2 weeks, and then Dragons and I are going to have a little adventure together.
Awesome.
I might have to steal the idea and make it a class assignment next year.
Do it.
Teachers are the best stealers. We're like, okay, so somebody told me, and we have a couple other teachers on here. I've started inviting other teachers too. I'm like, come listen. So April, and I saw we have April and Lindsay from Air Academy High School are both on here. But yeah, so I'm always like, what idea could I steal? So teachers are great at that. Seth and I've been joking that we've been as we've done this this series. So this is week, let's see, we did 3, 10, 17, 24. This is the 5th week that every week we're like, oh, we talked to them and there was something super cool and we're totally going to steal that and make it a new assignment.
Nice.
So, I have another question here. Here we go. What's your, this is my daughter. My daughter Allison would like to know what your favorite cartoon is.
Is it modern or older cartoon?
Either or. She's well versed. We make her watch all the things. I made her watch the pilot episode of Golden Girls with me the other day. Just so.
Nice. Oh gosh.
We believe in torturing our children.
I like anime, but Western cartoons. I think I really like Samurai Jack.
Okay.
That was a great cartoon. A lot of the cartoons I grew up with, I don't want to be biased, but like I really love that early 2000s, late 90s period of cartoons from Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network. Really classic, like the humor. Yeah, like Powerpuff Girls, that was great.
Yeah, I approve. Okay, what's your favorite anime? They'll kill me if I don't ask.
Yeah, I'd say Gurren Lagann.
Okay.
I really like Gurren Lagann.
Awesome. David Birch says Samurai Jack was his favorite.
Nice.
David
Yeah,
Birch
sound
has,
records.
he has had some really, so last week when we were talking with Luke Flowers, we asked Luke the same question, do you listen to music? And he said, yeah, he listens to music, but it depends on what he's animating. So when he's doing his Moby Shinobi books, he listens to the Shinobi soundtrack, which is a video game soundtrack, 8-bit video game soundtrack. I was like, oh,
Nice.
cool.
I relate to
like,
that.
that's my favorite too. So this has been good for David. I don't think I have any other questions. Seth, you have any other amazing questions?
No, Piper, this was fantastic. You hit so many great points, and you're very inspirational. So thank you for this time today.
Thank you, Seth. I appreciate it.
We appreciate you so much.
Awesome.
We really appreciate you, and we keep drawing amazing things that we love.
Cool.
Alrighty, thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too. Have a fantastic day. Hopefully the quarantine will end soon.
Right?
Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.